Namaste and good morning to our distinguished guests, members, and all those present here in person and virtually. A warm welcome to all of you here to the second day of the third International Conference of the Institute of Company Secretaries of India. I trust our delegates enjoyed the beauty and hospitality of Singapore yesterday and had a restful evening. Here we are for another day filled with insightful discussions and valuable connections. I am Vandana Sharma, the current secretary of ICSI Singapore chapter. Just to brief upon what we discussed yesterday, we had the privilege of hearing from our esteemed speakers on some key topics like sustainability reporting and the board's emphasis on risk and strategy. Their expertise and perspectives provided us with valuable insights that I'm sure many of us are still reflecting on. Building upon the momentum from yesterday, we have an exciting lineup of sessions planned for today as we delve deeper into our discussion on building resilient and sustainable economies. Before I hand over to our esteemed speakers, please allow me to announce the agenda for today's session. We will dive into discussions about unleashing the power of AI in compliance, India-Singapore bilateral ties, confluence of ESG into value creation, the acceptance and receptivity of DE&I, and of course, last but not the least, the hot topic worldwide, which is combating money laundering. I now have the privilege of inviting our esteemed speakers on stage for the fourth plenary session, Unleashing the Power of AI in Compliance. Our first speaker, ladies and gentlemen, is Dr. James Ong, founder and managing director, Artificial Intelligence International Institute. Dr. Ong has more than 35 years of experience of digital transformation in Asia, US, and Europe across multiple industry verticals. He will also be the moderator for this session. A big round of applause. Our second speaker, Mr. Ajay Surana, co-founder Fundbox Singapore. Mr. Surana is a seasoned entrepreneur with a diverse background in founding and scaling businesses with his expertise in fintech, edtech, and risk management. A big round of applause. Our third speaker, Mr. Pranav Rai, Legal Counsel, Hitachi Energy Singapore Private Limited. Mr. Rai specializes in trans-jurisdictional commerce, trade regulations, corporate advisory, and alternate dispute resolution, and his practice focuses in Southeast Asia, Australasia, and India. A big round of applause. Our fourth speaker, Mr. Indranil Choudhury, CEO, Lexplosion, India. Mr. Choudhury is a lawyer, entrepreneur, and a leading industry voice on compliance management programs for small and medium enterprises within and outside India. I extend a warm welcome to our distinguished speakers and request them to enlighten us with insights from their respective experiences. Their expertise and perspectives will undoubtedly enrich our discussion today. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, host, for introducing us. I'm James Ong. I'm glad to be invited to this particular panel session with three distinguished speakers. As the topic is about how to unleash the power of AI in compliance, actually is a very interesting topic, which you get to find out later on, because AI itself also needs compliance, while at the same time, we need to use AI for compliance. So you can see a very ironical topics of discussion. Of course, we have three speakers. I'd like to give a chance to each of our speakers to kind of like introduce themselves. Maybe I start with Ajay first. Yeah.
Thank you, James. My name is Ajay. I have been a practitioner of financial risk management for a good part of my career. From traditional risk management, most of my time I had spent working with financial institutions and banks to adopt technologies primarily to have better financial risk management. So to that extent, I have a vantage point of understanding how technology has transformed in the last 20 years. I have also had opportunity of starting few businesses, putting the same technology in places, and also recently I've started a lending fintech, which is again using artificial intelligence in some of its operations. Uh, let's use the word machine learning rather using artificial intelligence in some of its operations. And I also had an opportunity of investing and mentoring few AI startups in India. So it's a very interesting topic. I look forward to share my little experience. But most important, this is also my alma mater. I'm not a qualified company secretary. I'm not a member of Institute of Company Secretary, but I'm a qualified company secretary, waiting for membership for last 25 years. So hopefully that changes. So very pleased to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Ajay. Yeah, I think in the regulatory space, right, financial services is always the most conservative, also ahead of the curve, right? Pranav, you want to share about a little bit about yourself?
Thank you, James. Hello, everyone. I'm Pranav Rai, an in-house counsel with about 17 years of experience. Currently, I'm a legal counsel for Hitachi Energy, handling mainly their enterprise software suite of products for the APAC region, providing legal support as and when required. Thank you.
Thank you. When I got to know Pranav, I didn't realize that for a particular segment of product from Hitachi, it needs a full lawyers just to focus on that, right?
Not too many, though.
Not too many. Yeah, that means it shows the complexity of the compliance, right? Yeah,
It is.
good. Indranil?
Yeah. Hi. So I run a company called Lexplosion. We are a legal tech firm. So compliance management is a key aspect of what we do. And we've been doing this now for close to 17 years. What we essentially focus on is providing regulatory risk management as a software as a service product. So you get the knowledge aspects of what you need to do as a business to remain compliant, and then you get an application through which you get it. And then, of course, because we are one of the early starters in the compliance management, regulatory compliance management space from a technology perspective, AI by default was something that we had been dabbling with for some time, and now, of course, we're getting pretty deep into it, and especially on the knowledge side, using a fair amount of artificial intelligence, a fair amount of machine learning, and of course, a lot of algorithmic logic to kind of reduce the entire time taken to identify laws, determine applicability, and all of that. So more about that as we speak. So that's our journey.
Yeah, very interesting, Indranil. You are like the savior, the hero to provide solution to manage compliance, right? But before I get to the rest of the panel, I'd like to ask you a question. The name Lexplosion, right? What is the story behind it when you formed the company, right? Okay. Must have something interesting. I thought it's a very good choice of name.
So Lex is Latin for law, legal. So it's the legal explosion. In India, in many languages, including our parent root language, Sanskrit, there's a concept called sandhi, where you add two words and make it into one. So we did a sandhi of Lex and legal and explosion and did Lexplosion.
Explosions of innovation, right?
Yes. Yeah. So as a matter of fact, our catch line is innovating legally. So yeah.
Excellent. Good choice of name from my perspective.
Thank
because
you very much.
When I heard about it the first time, I find it very, very intriguing. Sure. Now, before we start, I think the topic is about compliance and AI, right? Of course, how many of you have not heard of AI so far? Okay, nobody raised their hand. How many of you think you know what is compliance? Nobody raised that. Okay. Okay. I see. When I was given this topic, I'm in the AI governance and ethics and many other area. But when I look at this topic given to me by Sonu, right, I was like thinking really hard. What does compliance means to different people? So the first thing we need to get the baseline, right, for each of the speaker is explain what is the definition of compliance in their perspective. And then since it's such a wide range, each one of them will have their experience and expertise in each area, right? So I like each of the speaker to define a little bit of the compliance. What does it mean, right? So that at least after 10 minutes, you at least have a baseline of what our common understanding is before we get into the subject matter. Now, I want to change the order a little bit. I want to have Pranav, starting with Pranav first.
Thank you, James. So compliance, as per me, is it's not limited to compliance with a web of laws trying to find loopholes. It is that to an extent, but it is more than that. It has got to do with good business practices, respect for your customers, respecting their privacy, transparency. Especially true in the context of AI, I would think, where we don't really have too many laws, or we definitely don't have too many laws which have caught up to AI. We do have, for example, recent enactment of the EU AI Act, but it's new. It will take time, and many countries still don't have it. So if you set our standards to good business practice, then I think we are aiming higher, and we would be able to comply better.
Okay, so I take it away, it's actually compliance is a type of mindset, right?
Yeah, I
It's
think
a type
so.
of mindset. I think that's important because the first default thinking is about law. What are the legal risks you're exposed to, right? I like that personally. Ajay?
I think just building on to what Pranav said, I mean, it's coming from a risk and finance background. I typically like to put some silos and then combine them. So if I look at that, there is definitely compliance, which is with respect to regulation. What regulation and the law ask us to do, and that's compliance. The second layer, which is the internal, there's the governance framework, there's a corporate policy, and then you have to adhere and meet and comply with that. That's your self-governed standards. But the third one, which is getting more and more promising talk now, is when it's a moral compliance or ethical compliance, where you are doing what is right for the society, and we talk about all the ESG standards and others, but that's again a compliance which kind of overarches the first two. So if you look at those, the word AI, when we are talking about the AI, while regulatory and internal compliance is easier to adhere to, but there's no laws which puts you with respect to your moral and ethical compliance. So I think those are three areas of compliance to me.
I see. So in summary, the three layer, one is the regulatory law or policy, right? Second one is your internal operations. And third one is your ethical values, right? I think that is, again, a very good baseline plus mindset, you know. Indranil, you've been serving how many customers have you served in your career?
In my career,
Yes, I know this is a surprise question.
that would probably be, I don't know.
Thousands?
We have a active set of about 450 clients as on today. Over the years, yes, it could probably be a little over 1,000, but I wouldn't really have a count.
Okay, good. I think your definition of compliance definitely carries some weight, right?
Well, I don't know, but my first memories of compliance was when my mom told me that I have to wake up at 6 in the morning to be able to reach school by 8. And whether I wanted to or not, I had to. I don't know whether there was any law, but I had to follow it for sure for several years. But when I was reflecting on your question, because you told us that you're going to ask us about compliance, I was kind of trying to figure out how to remind myself about where compliance came into all of this. Because to me, after having worked now in the area of compliance for some years, compliance has two very critical aspects to it. One is process and one is data. Now, so then I was thinking about the 6 o'clock example, and I realized that, okay, initially I used to try and, push the boundaries, push the envelopes and get up at 6:45 and try and get ready in about, 11 minutes because, the school bus came at 7. So I had to be ready before that. But then I realized that the process didn't work very well. So then I had to push it to 6:30 and finally kind of draw the line at 6. Therefore, there were two aspects to it. One was data. When I woke up at 6:45, I struggled, missed the bus a few times. My dad had to grudgingly take me to school and drive me to school. That didn't go down well with him. So the data point suggested that you needed to increase your time to get ready, to prepare. And that came with and that led to a change in the process. So a lot of organizations that we have worked with over the years have kind of looked at compliance as a set of actions. You have to file a form, you have to submit a return, you have to renew a license. But none of these actions you can manage to do if you have a proper process. You can do it for 5 successive years without a miss, and yet, because you did not have a process, miss it the 6th time. Therefore, having adequate and structured sources of data, which also becomes very important if you're planning to use artificial intelligence in the world of compliance, along with having identifiable processes, which again can be monitored using solutions, including artificial intelligence, to me are 2 of the critical aspects of compliance.
Very interesting. Looks to me you're born to be compliance experts since you were young.
I was born to be compliant.
Yeah, exactly. In fact, I think the reason you are this way, the example you cite, kind of inspired me to think that you actually are a good observer from not just from the participant perspective, from actually observing from how you as an actor work with your mother, right? And therefore you observe the data and the process, how you work. So you come up with a methodology to look at things, kind of also explain what Ajay and Pranav has observed, but in a different angle, right? No, in fact, when I asked the question just now, other than the definition of compliance, I mentioned about what is one area of expertise. Huh? If there's, I know you have a lot of expertise. If there's one area of expertise that you are good at, right, what would that be? Indranil?
Personally or as a company? Because I carry no
Okay, I give you a
expertise.
choice. Personally and also in company. You can give you 2 answers.
So personally, I've been interested in the areas of privacy and data protection over the last few years. That's been an area of particular interest for me. As an organization, regulatory compliance, particularly in areas like corporate governance, labor and employment, some amount of environmental health and safety, which are all key aspects of ESG, for example, have been areas of focus, not necessarily because that's been our only areas of interest, but because that's where most of our clients have been particularly interested in us or our knowledge in terms of helping them with the compliance management processes.
So curiously, when you say personal aspiration or expertise is in privacy, right? Why? I'm just curious.
Because it seems like an area where the law is desperately trying to catch up with everything that is happening in the world of technology, and that's not just true for any one country. I think in most countries, including some of the more advanced regulatory regimes, the law is constantly trying to figure out what to do with the way technology is moving. For example, the entire, today it seems like generative AI has been in our lives for years, but it just completed a year a few months ago. And in this time, it has disrupted life so much that most governments across the world are desperately trying to find a balanced yet ethical way of regulating this aspect of business and this aspect of technological advancement. And a lot of that is governed by a feeling that regulation is for the betterment of human beings, and privacy plays a very core aspect. I mean, why so many governments are so keen on regulating generative AI or AI in general is because there is a genuine and understandable belief that it is going to impact the privacy of individuals beyond everything else that has happened in our lives already over the last couple of decades. So that's probably one of the reasons why it interests me so much.
Okay, great. For those of you who are interested in compliance with privacy, I'm sure Indranil will be a very suitable person to talk to, right? Now, Ajay, your one key, if there's one area of top expertise in compliance, what would that be, personally as well as a business?
Not precisely compliance, but the areas which I've worked on. One was definitely, which will be a greater topic later in the day today, which is fraud detection and anti-money laundering. That is something which I have spent a lot of time. And actually, the adoption of machine learning happened first in that space in the financial services industry. Well, we use the word AI now, but that has been already being done for quite a few years. So that's one. The second is the credit risk. I want to use AI only to make money for myself. So for credit risk, it's a financial lending institution which I run. I want to make better decisions, whom to lend, how much to lend, at what price to lend. And I am trying to focus on that, and credit risk is a very interesting area. But actually, where I would like to focus changed this morning. This morning when I was coming here, I thought I'll have to change my profession to talk against AI. Because very few will talk against AI. When I talk about against AI, it's about the risk of AI. So I think I'm gonna spend much more time in next couple of days to think about that, and then how do I position myself as an expert in that space, and talk more and more about that, and maybe I'll come to your institute also.
Yeah, so if I understand correctly, you want to talk about against AI, is that correct? Very interesting. So I think we do need more people like Ajay, because indeed there are a lot of people who are want to use AI, but we do also need skeptics to want to bring out the issue against that. So we will have more discussion after this. Pranav, your number one expertise or perspective on compliance?
Number one expertise in the sense of the amount of time it consumes would be, I'm a deals lawyer mainly. So it's compliance with respect to our contracts, which has got 3 to 4 components to it. One would be obviously compliance with the contract law and the several laws which come along with that, privacy, cybersecurity. Then it would be what are our business policies regarding contracting? What is our appetite level, which can differ from what you have as your policies? And the last would be part of what the customer wants us to comply with. So what is our contracting obligations beyond the contract law?
Okay.
That would be one interesting insight which I may want to share here is regarding use of AI for contracting compliances. And over there, I think that what we tend to miss out, at least I did, is the training data which the compliance solution. And I think it applies throughout the scale. It's the quality of the training data needs to be good. Now, if you are struggling with providing the AI provider or AI system with a repository of contracts, you are failing it in some sense. So the insight is that the training data is extremely important.
Oh, okay, interesting. So you talk about contract, right? Isn't that now with the large language model, you have to put your customer confidential contract into the AI system, right? How do you manage that? You build a private version of your system? How do you do that?
So for now, we are not using any AI system as such, but there is obviously in the near future we will see. I think it will start with, for us, it will most likely start with the Copilot.
I see. You put it into the Copilot. You trust Microsoft?
We don't.
The Copilot? You don't.
As of now, we don't. But and one reason for that is it's there are 2 kinds of accounts in Copilot, right? The normal one and the work account.
I see.
Now, the work account has got, being a lawyer and being a compliance lawyer, I would want to take a look at the privacy notice or the commercial data protection notice they have got. For the work account, the protections are good. For the non-work account, the protections are not as good. So none as of now, but yeah, in the near future, we'll see and assess.
Yeah, I think this is a very pragmatic issue that we need to address, right? Maybe Indranil.
Before getting into anything else on the trusting of Microsoft, any of us using Microsoft Outlook, Word, PowerPoint, and Excel potentially have very limited option but to trust Microsoft, because in some shape or form, every time you send an email out using Microsoft Outlook or any of the associated services, there is a certain amount of risk that we all carry in terms of what can potentially happen in terms of who all will have access to that email, what kind of slicing and dicing the information within that email will be done, so that you can then receive a update every week on all the key actionables on your plate and everything that comes along with using of any of the Microsoft products.
Okay, so in this case, since we're talking about this particular topic, right, is Microsoft doing it legally, in your opinion, since you guys are all legally trained? I'm not, right?
So I do not know the workings of Microsoft well enough to know whether they are compliant with all the regulatory aspects. But in India today, the privacy law is still in its very nascent stage. So I would think that as far as India is concerned, they would generally be compliant.
They're compliant, but they're still collecting our information.
They most certainly are, and some of which I'm sure they have sought lawful consent. But for example, if you look at GDPR, which is probably one of the more advanced versions of data privacy regulation, there is a lot more consent requirements for operating in the European Union. And I know that when you subscribe to any of the Microsoft products in the European Union, the number of consents that you need to provide are much higher than what you need to provide, let's say, when you are subscribing to the same services in India.
So in this case, we probably consent to it by clicking say yes, right?
Right.
But Pranav, you mentioned, right? None of us can read the contract, right? It's
Right.
impossible to do so in the instant that you're clicking on it, right?
I think one quick check, and that one minor distinction with what Indranil ji said. See, we are all using Microsoft products, agreed. But Copilot, for example, is different in the sense that it's the critical question for me would be, especially if I'm using customer data, putting in customer data or my commercially sensitive data,
Yeah.
and obviously the personal data. But the personal data would be less, right? I'm mainly talking about, when I'm talking about Copilot in a work environment, I'm mainly talking about the commercial data. That's what my main concern is. Over there, the first thing to check is, and perhaps the only thing to check is, are they using the data for training purposes? If they are, then I'm not giving them this data, which is, as I said, which is the case with work product, right? The work account. In the work account, they won't be using it. They say that, but not in the normal non-work account, not in the free account.
Okay. Free account, yeah. That means the paid account, they have something that is legally specified that they will protect your data, right? Okay. Before we move to the next topic, I want to let you all know you can. We have a question and answer sessions. I'd love to have questions from the floor. I'm just curious, how many people have some questions? Just raise your hand. Great, wonderful. We have allocated 10 to 15 minutes for that. Please ask really tough questions to our panelists. Right? They like tough questions. Yeah, that will make my job easier. Okay, now we have covered the kind of basic of their expertise on compliance, what their definition is, because if you don't have the right definition, it's very hard to discuss. And nobody is an expert in everything, right? Yeah. So the next area I want to move on to is like, all of us plan to use AI for compliance, right? Yeah, okay, so there's a lot of plan for AML, for many things, right? So what are the pros and cons, right? What are the good thing and the bad thing, and what are the benefits and risks, right? Maybe Ajay, you want to start first? Especially you are against the AI, right? Now you take a very strong position, right?
Today I'm against. Tomorrow I don't know.
Tomorrow you're not, okay.
But clearly, I do not have a strong view on that. Can AI be used for the purpose of compliance? The whole AI premise is to make things more efficient, more faster, and reduce the overall cost of compliance. To that extent, yes. I think the worry is about the compliance of AI itself. Right? So is the other way which is more difficult. I'll give you a very simple example, right? From my area. Let's say I have a credit scoring model, which is based on the historical data trying to predict which customer I should give loan to and which customer I shouldn't give at what price, what duration, to maximize the loss, minimize the losses. In that, the inherent biases do come. For example, it will discriminate against certain gender, it will certainly discriminate against certain race, and that bias will creep inside my model. And that's where my model itself become risky because I can be exposed to a lawsuit. So the compliance of the AI is more critical because biases would come and creep inside. To extend to this logic, uh, the transparency part, and I'm sure we'll talk about that more, but this whole compliance of AI, there's a simple analogy, and my worry is, now I'm a student of financial risk management, and for all financial risk, we have built large quantitative models in the past, right? Which tries to predict the losses, and these models fail at some point of time, and then the catastrophe losses comes. What is happening is a huge reliance on that. If I go and ask my son, I asked my son a couple of years back, your handwriting is pathetic. And he had a very simple answer. I don't have to write, Papa, when I grow up, right? And I want to be a doctor, it's okay, right? The second thing, now I says, at least write well. Why do I need to write? There's tools which are supposed to write for me, right? That's what is happening. So the reliance is actually making us more dumb, right? And will make even more dumb going forward. And that is where the reliance on the AI will become so heavy, and the biases will actually probably take over us. And that's where I think the compliance of AI is becoming more crucial than AI in compliance.
Very interesting. I think Ajay is one step ahead in terms of my questionings.
Oh,
Well, so the topic today is supposed to be unleashing the power of AI in compliance. Maybe the topic should also be about unleashing the power of compliance in AI development, right? So this is a very convoluted topic because there's a human involved and etc., right? And I'm just curious on the audience, how many people believe that we should use AI in our life? Nobody wants to use AI in our life? Oh, okay. So we have about 40%. How many people are worried about using AI in your life? Wow, there are more people worried about that. Now you know why we're having this interesting topic on this panel, right? Okay, now Ajay has stated his position about, you're kind of two-way, right? You want to use it, yet you're ironical. You find it's an irony, to use it.
I see the challenges which I'm worried that my organization doesn't face a lawsuit some point of time.
I see. Well, anyway, I think I'm not surprised by this because I've been in AI about 38 years. I've gone through the different wave, right? We are in a dilemma situation, to be or not to be, to use or not to use AI, right? It's going to be a topic for the next 20 years, 30 years at minimum, right? Now, so Pranav, before we get to Indranil, all right? Now, what do you think are the pros and cons, all right? Your perspective, especially when you're using it in your work, right?
I think the pros would be obviously the accuracy.
Accuracy
And trust.
Trust, accuracy, okay.
The cons would be which kind of go against the pros, obviously, which make it less accurate and make it lack trust on occasions. Would be the lack of an understanding of what happens to the IP in the output. What happens if you're an organization and you and the AI system infringes the third party's IP? The ChatGPT and New York Times case, which is going on, is an example of that, and kind of let's see what the courts have to say about it. But it would be interesting.
Major risk when you're using AI for commercial reason, right?
Yes.
Interestingly, I also have an assessment of this. Using it for personal reason, use ChatGPT to write an email, write a document for children or a speech is okay. But you're using it for a legal or commercial reason, you have to think twice, right? Because the cost of dealing with hallucination is pretty high, right? Yeah. So these are all the dilemma that we are facing as well, right? I'm sure you have to deal with that now, and etc. We get to that in a second. Indranil, what do you think? Are you using AI in your Lexplosion?
We are. I'm now very, very worried after hearing all of you, but yes, we are using.
You should be worried. I had to let you know.
Yeah, but what we are doing is we are building our own. So large language model, so to speak, using, so we are training models to be able to deal with our data, so not really looking at the World Wide Web, to be able to analyze and come up with research notes, analysis of a certain extent of what would be compliances emanating from a piece of law which we would otherwise manually do. So in terms of what we are doing, like I mentioned, compliance is all about process. So even for creation of compliances, we have a very structured process where we have a set of lawyers, company secretaries, chartered accountants working on reading laws, analyzing them, and coming up with various compliance actionables which need to be done at different frequencies, which then goes into a part of our compliance solution. So what we are working on using large language models is training it to be able to do some of that, and not the Microsoft Copilot, but using our own lawyers and other compliance professionals to work as co-pilots in that model, to be able to identify whether the analysis is accurate. And we are, obviously the aim is to reach 100% accuracy, which will probably not happen anytime in the foreseeable future, but reach a reasonable level of accuracy where between a first year or a second year associate having worked on a document and the AI-driven document, the difference would be more in favor of AI than in favor of the first-year associate, so that they can then become the trainers. So the areas which we are focusing on is what that means for the life cycle of a lawyer or a company secretary's journey. What will they do if a lot of the work that they did in the first 3 years are going to be done or is going to be done by large language models, natural language processing and things like that. And what we are recognizing is that their training cycle and their career cycle has to be a lot faster. What they would do for the first 3 years of their career, they will probably have to learn in a closer to a 6-month cycle, so that then they can start becoming the expert who can provide the inputs to improve the model. Because, with all due respect to all the negatives around generative AI, there were lots of negatives about electronic typewriters when they first came in, and a whole bunch of people across the world. In countries like India, there were massive strikes which happened.
Wow.
When electronic typewriters first came in, when computers came in, the level of strikes was even higher, because people thought, hundreds and thousands of people thought they will lose their jobs, the world will change, nobody will survive. But the fact of the matter is that today, everybody, including all those people and the next generation of those similar people, have adapted to it. So we will have to adapt to AI. There is
new paradigm.
To this new paradigm. I do not think there is any point in questioning whether this new paradigm is worth having in our lives, because it is in our lives already, whether we like it or not. Definitely we need to find ways of regulating AI, which is what I think Ajay correctly pointed out. But keeping in mind that AI exists and will continue to influence our lives more and more, I think what is more important from a compliance perspective is to find how we can apply it to a point where eventually, see, our experience of having worked with all the clients that we have is, at the end of the day, a client is not really looking for a solution which gives you more headaches. It doesn't want a solution which tells you, you have 250 things to do this month. And they want a solution which tells them, guess what, we have analyzed, you've already done 225 of those. For the balance 25, these are the additional things that you need to do. Guess what, this is what the industry around you is doing. This is the benchmark. Yesterday, there was a lot of discussion around BRSR, the Indian equivalent of ESG. It's about being able to analyze data that is already there in your ERP system and assess it and say, okay, from a BRSR perspective, you are compliant. But guess what? If you wanted to sell the same product in the European Union, you would fall short because your emission rates are way too high. And therefore, to be able to use the same set of products in the European Union, you will have to do these 3 additional things. That is inevitably what clients want and will continue to want more and more as they understand the influence of AI. So our role as a compliance management organization is really to find ways to be able to help our clients do that. Obviously keeping in mind privacy concerns, confidentiality concerns, and all the other concerns that exist. But a large volume of data is publicly available today. A BRSR report, or the BRS report rather, which is filed in India, or the ESG reports which are filed across the globe in different forms, is largely public data. And therefore, it is impossible to say that we are not going to be able to analyze that data and come up with baselines, which is something that AI models will be very, very capable of doing very soon.
Yeah, I first of all, I echo your perspective that I think also all our panel speaker, I think AI is inevitable in the human evolutions, right? Since the many revolution we have gone through, right?
Right.
Now, for your particular case of Lexplosion, did you build a private instance of your, so you start from scratch? Basically.
Yes. So we didn't do it all on our own. I mean, we haven't completed the entire journey, of course. We're somewhere.
Are you using open source? Or you're using Microsoft open?
We are using open source. We are partnering with a couple of organizations who are also in the same space. And we are collaborating in building this model together.
I see.
And, so we have a large volume of compliance data for India, which has been the country that we have worked
within your business?
Within my business, within Lexplosion's business. We are using that data to train the model.
Sure.
And then using that model to look at data from other countries, let's say the anti-money laundering laws of Singapore, to see what kind of output we are getting using the model. So that's the journey.
Maybe I want to pose a question to the audience. How many of you are building your own large language model? I'm just curious. Oh, there's one. Okay. So, because, how many are using open cloud-based and a public large language model like ChatGPT, things like that? Okay, wow. You trust all your data with it. Okay, very interesting. I don't think you have a choice. I think the cost is high, right, to build it yourself?
It's very high, yes, but in our case, so we are definitely using APIs available from various,
I see.
open source large language models as well. But our data source is our intellectual property, and we would not want to rely on data sources which are not controlled by us, at least in the immediate future. So that's why we are more interested in building something which is more accurate towards what we need.
So Ajay, you're also building your own. Can you share a little bit about your experience in terms of data, right? The costs and the way of doing it.
This is not for the this business. I have another company in
Another startup.
Yeah, it's in India.
Okay.
Which is completely built on AI. That's on the publicly financial information.
I see.
So we are talking about using AI to take. So everybody knows that when you go for a loan in a bank, you have to give your financial statements, which is in a PDF format, with your profit and loss, balance sheet, your annual report, your notes, and a lot of other things. So it's basically taking that data, digitizing and contextualizing it for the purpose of better credit decisioning.
Sure.
So that's where it is. So we are using, we have taken financial statements from almost 90 countries, training the model to understand what other liabilities means in this country and the other country, and then how does it align with the GAAP standards. So coming to your specific question on whether you're using third party or internal, the what is available in the market, whether I want to use ChatGPT, this is uberly expensive. I'll not be able to pay.
Very expensive, yes.
I'll not be able to pay for that. So we do experiment on that on a basis, but the whole idea is to build our own libraries.
I see. Okay. Let's say if you're doing it in India, right? The same technologies like what Indranil is doing. When you, let's say from India, you build it using your private or Indian data. if you come to a market like Singapore, you have to use the Singapore data
No, so-
separately, right?
So no, I'm training, we are training this data on financial statements and financial reports of 60 countries.
I see. Okay, good. Pranav, you any perspective on this one? You're not building one because it's quite expensive. What kind of, from the user perspective, what kind of requirements you need? Maybe provider like Indranil can support you, right? I'm sure they're one of the potential customer, right? Maybe you can talk to each other after this, right? Yeah.
As I discussed before, the contracting compliance, which is very different from the rest of the compliances because you're not talking about regulations there.
I see.
Is one aspect where
Internally, you're using it for any contract that you're doing, making sure that you run the automation through it to check for any risks. Is that how it works?
So we are not using, as I said, we are not using an AI as such. We are using automation tools, yes. We are using contract lifecycle management tools, but they're not AI. There's no machine learning there.
Okay.
So in that sense, but that's something which I'm looking forward to.
Okay.
The contracting compliances, and so there's a lot of use cases and there's a fair amount of work that is happening in this space. We do have a contract lifecycle management solution, but we are not trying to use AI for that because the volume of data that is required to teach a model, without breaching client confidentiality, it is impossible to find that volume of data. And most clients, so in the case of regulatory compliance, all the data that we are using to train the model is our data that has been, we own the intellectual property. Whereas the contracts that we will require to be able to teach a model, to be able to, let's say, do the first line of redlining for a client contract for, let's say, template-driven MSAs or whatever supply agreements, that would require thousands of contracts, which is impossible to get in the public domain. There are companies who have successfully done it. I have absolutely no idea about what kind of consents they have sought and what kind of confidentiality agreements they have signed. I will hope that they did follow the processes that are required, but that's the fundamental problem that, say, an organization like ours is facing in being able to use a data model to train on contracts, because it is completely unlike with, even for example, a lot of the data that we'll be using eventually to train our model on things like, say, BRSR compliance will be publicly available data. It will be available in the annual returns of companies. So it's not like something, but with contracts, pretty much everything is private. Nothing is public. You do not, except for the few registered contracts which you have for maybe land-related matters, almost all contracts are private documents. So there is no way we can claim that we can use that data to train unless a client like you accepts and is willing to provide us with that huge volume of data for training purposes. Yes, Ajay.
I'll just extend on that. I precisely, the same startup which I have is called XLRT in Calcutta. We did a pilot with a very large global bank. And precisely what you said, the bank said, I have more than 20,000 supplier agreements, MSAs, SOWs, purchase order, invoices. It keeps flowing. And they are like all these documents. They simply wanted a tool which can just take all of those documents and create some kind of analytics on top of that. So analytics with respect to how much agreement has been signed, what was approved, what has been used, what is unused, what is remaining, and what is the expected cash flows against these signed contracts in next couple of years, purely from a finance perspective. And the other side, which was the legal side, is that there are 15 or 20 legal clauses they would like to seriously look at, maybe indemnity clause, warranty clause, termination clause, governance. It basically takes all those agreements and then benchmarks against internal standards and create a risk heat map. So to the point which was being made is that, yes, it's being trained on the large volume of data set which is available with that customer. That's 10,000 plus contracts one single customer had. But then it brings the dictionary, the legal dictionary back into the application. So I might not use that model, that contracts for doing the same work for somebody else, but the legal dictionary, legal terminologies, the variations of the contracts, the type of contracts, the formats of the contracts from different countries.
Human common sense reasoning stuff, right?
That all gets inside the system, and that's what it does. It learns from different formats, different templates, different legal styles, and encompasses that, and then it can be extended to other places.
So just to add to that,
Go ahead.
and that was the point which I made earlier as well, just to add to Indranilji's point as well. And I think that's one area where we, as as customers, have failed. Indranilji, for example, because if we have a good repository, especially that's so true in the context of software contracts. We have 20-year-old contracts, renewals are a norm over there. They would be having hundreds of amendments. If you have a proper record of that,
Right.
if you have highlighted what is within your policy, what is outside your policy,
Right.
you've highlighted the tricky bits there. It becomes all the more relevant for the AI to function, because that's but also because of that, because I'm providing more training data, then also I think the responsibility of the AI provider
Yes.
increases, right? So then I would be more concerned about IP, what
Correct.
happens to the output product. Then I would be more concerned about confidentiality aspect.
Correct.
I would be
The
privacy,
dilemma that some of
cybersecurity.
our clients with whom we've had this conversation have faced is they're only one side to those contracts.
Yes.
So even to grant us consent to be able to use that data, you need the approval of the other side as well, which in case of some of the banks or larger organizations are literally thousands of different individuals. So to go back and seek consent from every one of them, even if they're templated contracts to be able to use their data, becomes so much more difficult. So that adds to the dilemma of consent in this case.
Thank you very much. You can see the discussion is getting more and more complex. I'm getting a headache right now. AI is complicated enough and VUCA enough. Now we have compliance with the lawyers, right? So now when you mix the two things, this is going to be very complex for the next 10 to 20 years. Now, to the program manager, given the topic, can we request for another 1 more hour for the panel session? No, not possible, right? Now, never mind. Now, I want to open the question to the floor. In fact, this is a topic you can talk for a long time. You can do a workshop for 1 full day just on it, right? I think maybe we can do that sometime in the future, right, to plan. So any question, can somebody bring the microphone to any, can you please introduce yourself quickly and ask your question directly? And you can point to any particular speaker except me to answer the questions.
Well, first and foremost, thank you for an insightful session this morning. My name is Priya, and I lead.
Can you stand up? Sorry, I can't see you.
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
I'm so sorry. So first of all, thank you for an interesting session. My name is Priya, and I am the regulatory counsel for Verizon, based in Singapore. But this is, I have two questions. One, more of a reflection on the discussions this morning. When we think about AI, largely in terms of, I'm a lawyer and a company secretary, I think more in terms of compliance. To Pranav's point, it's more about creating a culture of compliance, creating a culture of baking it into our products and systems, and that's what we do as lawyers. And in my role, I also look at developments that are happening globally. Pranav, you spoke about the EU AI Act, right? They're taking a much more risk-based approach where they're trying to classify high risk, low risk AI. But if you look at Asia Pacific as a region, we see a very disturbing trend emerging. I won't say disturbing, but a diverse set of requirements or trends emerging from a policy perspective. Singapore is taking much more, pro-innovation approach. They are more voluntary, flexible standards to AI, regulatory sandboxing approach with the AI Verify Foundation. What, in your view, do you think, where would our region land up in terms of compliance, in terms of establishing those guardrails to protect some of the concerns that come with AI? As a compliance professional, I would prefer a globally harmonized approach where I don't have to spend a lot of time navigating through 150 countries that I am looking into or wherever. So in your view, what do you think would be a preferred approach from a compliance perspective as we look at this new and emerging technology? Thank you.
Anyone of you take on these challenging questions?
Let's start with Pranav.
Thanks.
Direct it to him.
Redirect this to you.
Thank you.
Lawyer to lawyer conversation.
Perfect. I think I'm not a great procrastinator, but my guess would be it would be whatever laws we come up with, the rest of the countries, would be more closely aligned to the EU AI Act. I say this mainly on the basis of what happened with GDPR, for example. There are differences, yes. We don't have verbatim GDPRs for all, and some are even stricter, South Korea, for example. But we can see the similarity. So with that view, I think it would be it would be a good, balanced, reasonable approach for the companies to take. Take a look at the EU-AI Act and work on that basis. Because the chances of laws being more stricter than that are less in my view, at least in most of the countries.
Yeah, I'm just curious, how much time do we have? 5 more minutes? Just let me know. Yeah.
Just to add to that view,
Yeah,
my
go
belief
ahead.
is, we are from Singapore, we are in other countries here which has a lot of innovation. I believe that we will not see strict regulation coming in anytime soon. It has to grow. To regulate something, there has to be a big industry, right? Something will break and then the regulation will come. Till that time, it has to grow. Lessons, obviously, as Pranav said, is coming from EU because they are the first. But there's not, it's not being adopted or endorsed by anybody else so far. But I think that a lot of lessons will come from the lawsuits, which will happen against big techs, which are already happening. They will set some precedent. But in this part of the world, something has to happen before the law will come.
You want to add?
To add to your point about being the laws being more flexible, I also do feel, also being a privacy professional, that where possible, to the extent we could leverage existing laws that are already available that could take care of some of the concerns that arise with AI, right? Instead of having distinct AI agencies or so and so forth. So I think that may be another approach to look at when we advocate and promote policy messaging on how to regulate AI.
True.
Thanks.
Go ahead.
I think just Pranav, before you, I think what Pranav suggested is that there's a learning to protect yourself. There's a learning which is coming from EU, and there's one learning which we all should have, which is just follow your common sense, stay to what you believe is right. I think we should be okay for some time.
My only point here is that the common sense here would actually be to try to follow it. Reason is, and it's not for users, I'm talking about the AI organizations. Reason is that it's an expensive affair. Now we have a law and we know that there's a good probability that others also will follow suit. May not be now, maybe a few years down the line, but others are expected to follow suit. And it has got principles like, it's based on trust, has got the data minimization principles, already applies GDPR principles in several respects, accountability, data minimization, which I talked about. So the likelihood of countries following that is higher. So that can be a standard, generally speaking, which can be taken up. That will just, because, and I mainly say this because it's an expensive affair to come up with the AI system.
I'll just add
Go
a
ahead.
little bit. See, I think how regulation will work, we will only know with time. It would obviously be perfect if there is a harmonized regulatory approach, but hey, the world has not even been able to come up with a single plug point after so many years. So you have to carry these different sockets around with you through the entire world. So it's unlikely that we will have it. What is working in the world of privacy for a lot of the technology companies is what is the concept of privacy by design, where when they're building products, they're baking in privacy requirements into the solutions using what are called privacy enhancement technologies, PET. And that's really working for some of these technology companies, because then it is baked into the entire development cycle of a product, and that ensures that it is conforming with the requirements of different guidelines across the globe. That is what will probably have to happen in the world of AI as well. Bake in the various regulatory concerns that we can initially understand into the development of a large language model, a AI-driven solution, so that when it's eventually built, irrespective of what the specific privacy requirements or the AI requirements of a country are, the general principles would likely be the same, and therefore your product would be in sync with that. That would probably be the best way forward, which is what companies like ours are trying to adapt.
Thank you, Indranil. I was told we have only 2 minutes left. I just want a quick answer to your, in a sense, especially spending a lot of time in the AI governance space. If you look at climate change or the whole geopolitics with the United Nations, humanity can never agree on a single set of rules. That's going to be very tough. So I think there will be a need of not just using law, but the way you appropriate fund to the invisible hand of capitalism could be another way of making it happen rather than just law, right? So this is a topic we can have another totally different sections to discuss. And I apologize to the rest of the people who want to ask questions because we don't have the time unless we can be given more time. Now, as such, I'd like to wrap up the session. I know that we have more discussion after this. For each of our speakers, just one last statement for the audience to take away. Just 10 seconds, 15 seconds. Ajay, what's the one advice you give to the audience?
I think the same thing. I think be very wary of use of AI and make sure that we follow the principles which we believe we would expect others to respect our privacy and other things. Let's not get away from the privacy laws. That is something which is and the ethical part of that is non-negotiable.
Pranav, one statement.
Specifically in the context of generative AIs, before inputting any data, read the privacy notice, and in case of Microsoft Copilot, read the commercial data practices.
Indranil, one statement.
From a corporate data perspective, most of what you share with companies like us is already in the public domain. So don't be so wary, don't be so worried. Share data, it will help you be more compliant, spend less time, be more efficient with all your business processes as you move forward.
Good. I just want to give my own perspective. I think AI is inevitable, it's here to come, but it's all our collective responsibility, not just to the lawyer, to do something about it before it gets out of hand, right? That's my perspective. Thank you very much. I'd like to give applause to our 3 speakers. Thank you very much. Thank you everybody for attending the session.
Now that was an insightful session indeed. The topic of AI is in itself very intriguing, as Dr. Ong rightfully mentions, and connecting the term to compliance gives it an all the more interesting angle. We like it or not, AI has definitely creeped into our everyday lives. But with things like data protection gaining importance and catching up as we speak, it may make more of us pro-AI with time and help us come out of the dilemma of to be or not to be. We all are grateful for the deep insights shared by our panelists here today. May I please request our Chairman, C.S. Nitish, and Vice Chairman, C.S. Dinesh, to please provide the mementos to our esteemed panelists. A big round of applause, please. Thank you once again.